Well, you can look through here, and they got all kinds of different ones. So take whatever you want.
Ooh. A dust of Door Seasoning County.
They're in Door County. He and his wife started it like this past year.
I'm talking about some private labeling potentially. I wonder if that's something that they're open to or not. Could be neat.
Whoop whoop.
Let's see if this thing's gonna update inside of 8 minutes like last week. Oh, well there it is. What do you
First time? Woo!
Oh, that's a weird sign. If things are gonna go easy, I'm expecting a lot of problems.
Dude, I have said it in my last 5 episodes. I've had so many issues. And I'm like, for anybody who watches the regular one, whatever Eric is going on, mine is 10 times worse.
Let's rip it.
This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, because that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag, you hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
Probably shouldn't have taken a bite right before I have to talk. Oh, it was a mistake.
Timing has never been our strong suit.
I can't turn down food for sake of talk.
Jalapeno cheddar hot stick in the mouth. Welcome.
Welcome to this shit show. We've seen some venison sticks or some hot sticks in the studio. Derek's here.
What up? These are good. Thanks for busting these out.
Felt necessary. I figured I went to the fridge, grabbed some beer, saw the Veni there. I'm like, let's grab that. Let's have a good time. Just bringing all the heartburn,
Do the kids eat the jalapeno cheddar ones?
They will not eat that. It's too spicy for them.
No, I don't blame it. I mean, they got a nice kick. They're real good.
Yeah. Zach, if you send me an audio message, if you're watching this, I can't listen to your audio message right now. Anyway, this is the Okayest Hunter podcast. We're coming at you from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and not Love Live. We're live from our studio here. So if you want to call into the show, just know that that's something that you can do during our live hour and a half-ish, usually 6 p.m. Central Standard Time to 7:30 p.m. Phone number is 262-757-4122. We are brought to you by Nosler Ammo. John Nosler, the founder of Nosler, emphasized the importance of quality and performance in ammunition and manufacturing, and his commitment to that innovation and excellence has been a cornerstone of not just their reputation, but the industry at large. A lot of other ammo companies look up to Nosler for kind of setting that bar, and we're really happy to have them as a presenting sponsor.
We're really lucky
of the show. I mean, for a number of reasons, but I mean, first of all, who we get to work with over there, they're great. They're knowledgeable. They know their stuff. They keep this tiny little safe stocked, and they help us make ethical kills come rifle season.
It's the best of the best,
which is a big deal. If we're an Okayest Hunter, we need all the help we can get. But ethics is something that, I'm not going to compromise on. Whether I'm an okay hunter or not, I'm still going to practice, still do what I need to do to put the animal down ethically. That's still very important, obviously. And you don't ruin the meat and all that other shit. Oh, there's the burp. I was waiting for that.
Woo!
Let's see how it goes tonight with the food arranger.
Yeah, we got some juicy beer, some nice little juice notes, some jalapeno cheddar hot sticks. Woo, we're going to be rumbling.
Coming down the pike, one of our partners here on the bottom of the screen, you can see Spartan Forge. I got the shirt on tonight, just so happens to be. Bill will be passing through Wisconsin next week, so he'll be here in studio.
Hell yeah.
Excited for that. Last time Bill was in studio, this studio was upstairs. This room was getting framed out, and we all got trashed. So I don't know if that's how it's going to go this time around.
I'll warn the wife.
But I think people got to see a side of Bill that probably doesn't come out as often as...
Because Bill and Spartan Forge helped this.
They funded this.
That's why the studio's here, right?
Yep. And in fact, it was actually interesting because it was before they were a fully fledged, business. They were cooking with gas at the time, but that was funded out of Bill's back pocket, as far as I understand. So it meant a lot. It means a lot. And here we are. I think we would have built this anyways. It just kind of sped things up because it was like, oh, well, I can go buy lumber now. And back then, lumber was really expensive.
That's during COVID.
So it was a big deal. Latitude. I don't know that they're going to be at Foam Fest in a human capacity, but certainly they're going to load us up with a lot of new gear they have coming out.
They just released some new gear.
A lot of stuff coming out. They're waiting for like some material to ship that stuff, but we're gonna get our hands on a lot of that stuff to be able to share with people at Foam Fest, which brings me to my next announcement. Foam Fest is about 31 days away.
Be there. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
So if you haven't registered, you can do so at okshunter.com. I think if you click on our About Us, there's an event tab. Or if you're on Instagram, you can click the link in our bio and there will be a registration link there. It's $40, get you the access to shoot the course, 1 free raffle ticket, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a good time. It's a good turnout. It's a lot of fun. It's a really great venue. Huracan archers. Fantastic place. I mean, my favorite thing that I talk about is I spray for mosquitoes on the course, and that's like a big deal for me.
Kid friendly. There's there's a very small playground there, but we had a couple of little activities for the kids. So very family friendly event. My kids are looking forward to it every year now, especially
youth bows.
Since it's around my daughter's birthday time, so it's always fun.
Is it her birthday this year again or no?
It's not on her birthday. No.
Thank God.
It's not. She's the 26th. I
Okay.
think we're the 31st.
Okay.
Yeah, so
taking more of some bites here.
Little leeway.
And then Rack Hub, they got some stuff. Pay attention to them. For August 1st, there's some stuff dropping. So I know you put them on the Dropping Pins podcast in the background.
I got both of them up on the wall. I used my the double shed hangers, the RH2s. They're both up. They look freaking awesome. Love them.
Cool.
Super easy to install. My son did it. I supervised because there's a power drill, but I supervised. And
did you put into a vise?
We didn't.
I didn't either.
I was the vice.
That was a bold move with your kids.
Don't hit my hands.
Or what's below them.
Yeah. Well, I was pretty careful about that.
Holy cow. Yeah, so obviously code OHB across all of our partners. That includes Muck and Bear. I know we don't say Bear often on the show because they have this beautiful sign here. The bow is hanging there. Mine is fully dialed in now, and I'm really jazzed about it. So I went back. My arm is feeling much, much better.
Dude, that's huge.
So the dry needling, I can't say enough positive things about physical therapy and all of that stuff. Like literal life changer. Not a game changer, a life changer. And yeah, Muck, corresponding with them today. I got to get an email back out to them tonight afterwards. But we got some product we're going to be kind of help test for them and kind of put through the paces, in addition to a lot of the other products that are tried and true and have been on the market for some time. So we're going to get loaded up with a bunch of boots, and I'm pretty enthused about that because if you have cold or uncomfortable or, shitty footwear, it ruins a hunt instantly. Like there's nothing worse than, like, it actually happened to my turkey hunt because I didn't have the right socks on like a jackass.
I remember you saying that.
But I'm also not typically running in fucking boots. So like,
yeah, he did some sprints,
abnormal.
like
Thanks
800 meters.
Yeah, Anthony, son of a bitch. Hey, Eric, just go sprint towards that turkey.
If you are we're obviously in Wisconsin, but we've got a shitload of rain. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do any early season, I mean, you're going to need knee boots. So that's where those Muck boots are going to come in huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be wet out there.
You're right, ma'am. Sorry, I'm done eating now, guys. I know it's not really a great listener experience to watch someone just eat food, but yeah. We have a guest, Matt Morris. So,
woo woo.
Derek's podcast, Dropping Pins, that you may or may not have listened to, is on this feed of OKS Hunter. It's also on our YouTube under the podcast channel, playlist, whatever it's called, which is great. If you haven't checked it out, listen to that. Episodes drop on Monday morning. But right before Derek's launched, the Bowyer Podcast launched with host Matt Morris, who's joining us tonight. In just a second, I'll bring him on. I didn't know that was a word, nor did I know what it meant. So we're going to learn more about what that is from Matt himself, who is an amateur bowyer and big trad guy with a really, I think, hopefully interesting story. Did I say something wrong?
No, just the first way you said Bowyer was like voyeur of boys a little bit, and then you said big trans guy. And I was just
shit.
Like,
we're getting
let's. Usually things get weird when Gregor's here, but let's.
This isn't the Olympics, okay?
Matt, we love what you're doing. We're not trying to.
Matt, we're getting weird with IPAs.
Sorry,
that's such a warm welcome. Yeah.
Hey, Matt.
Let's just remember that you approached us about this whole nonsense. So hopefully you know what you're dealing with here, being a guest tonight. But we're happy to have you.
He's actually Zach Hansen. He's the one to blame.
Oh well, yeah. Well, he's the son of a bitch. So
did you get your arm twisted into this, Matt?
Yeah, man. I was vehemently against it until
I actually do remember hearing this.
Yeah. I was like, I've got nothing to provide, nothing helpful to provide. And then all of a sudden I have a text introduction with Eric between Zach. And I'm like, okay, let's see where it goes.
Quick, man. Like I was like, oh yeah, no pressure. There's no timeline. You're like, next thing I know, I got an intro, contracts or something. I was like, shit, we're moving.
I don't idle well, man. It's not a good, I don't say that in a good way. I idle poorly. So if there's like something that's the hamster wheel is turning on, I typically have to take action to a fault.
I can relate. I think I idle at about 10,000 RPMs. So if you just under the gas, I'm revving like a fucking crazy person.
Yeah, I'm really good at providing the first wrong answer.
But a man of action, that's just, I don't know, interesting. My wife, and we've been talking about some stuff that's going on with her like dynamic at work, and one of the ladies that she's really close to is like going through a hard time right now because she feels like she never takes action and always like lets things kind of happen to her, and she's like not happy with that. So it's just interesting that like you said, like I don't idle well, I got to do shit, and Eric's like, I'm always doing shit. Yeah, everybody's a little bit different, and it's just cool how it happened. But I think it's awesome that you took the opportunity in front of you, and now here you are.
So let's talk about it, dude. Let's take the floor or the mic or whatever the hell we want to call this platform and walk us through what a Bowyer is and how you are one of those and how that you've arrived at that. Like I know you shared some of your the books that you're reading with me. Like let's back up as far as you want. And let's see where that goes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess, I grew up hunting and fishing and everything else. I was raised primarily by my grandparents in a little 900 square foot farmhouse in Missouri. And so you definitely, whitetail country, turkeys, small game, upland, stuff like that. And I didn't really start bow hunting until I was 14 or 15 when I was gifted an old, probably at the time, 20-year-old bear bow. And had no sights. I didn't know you were supposed to use sights on compounds or anything like that. So for a couple of years, I used it, just kind of shot it as you would, almost like a trad bow without sights. And I compound hunted for like 15 years, in addition to rifle hunting and black powder and stuff like that. And then a couple of years ago, my job is, I kind of transitioned out of government work after about 18 years or so of government work into the private sector, work in aerospace. And it's very startup-y. So it was just hauling.
You're being very modest about your government career. Do you care to enlighten us?
I want to know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in the Marine Corps for like 8 years, and then I spent about another 10 years or so working for Uncle Sam, mostly in the intelligence community, typically embedded, for about the last 10 years or so, embedded, typically working in the special operations community.
Is that how you met Zach, by the way?
I'm sorry?
Is that how you came across meeting Zach?
So kind of, yeah. So I was actually the associate dean of academics out at the NATO Special Operations School. And a buddy of mine, Shane Stuhlmiller, who's a MARSOC guy out there, he and Zach were both attending Hopkins for grad school. At the same time, my colleague Shane, he was in grad school attending the limited residency through Hopkins. I was going to the Brussels Diplomatic School out in Brussels, Belgium, because we were living in Belgium at the time. And he was like, oh, hey, there's this guy, Zach, I'm going to school with. He wrote this book called Turning Feral. You should check it out. And I think before any like Instagram or Facebook or email or whatever, Zach and I actually became acquainted on LinkedIn rather than, one of the more hip platforms. And because I work in space, we use, artificial intelligence, machine learning quite a bit as well. And I knew that was kind of his nerd background. So we've kind of corresponded professionally initially before we did, I guess, personally. And then, as he was going through this journey, I was inspired by his journey to go from a total city slicker supercomputer nerd to like living in the middle of nowhere in Idaho and trapping and all these things. So I actually made him a bow. Probably within my first 10 bows, one of those was a gift to Zach. And he sucks and he still doesn't shoot it. So yeah. So this is the peer pressure from the World Wide Web that he needs to get off his duff and like take action. And it was one of my earliest bows. So it's not like it's so pretty. It should be hanging on the wall.
It's one that should be getting dragged through the brush and using.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be murdering things right now. So then moving forward, came to the private sector. If you have a pretty good career in government, all you do have to do is whisper a little bit that you're looking at going private, and they'll scoop you up pretty good and give you a big fat raise and let you work from home. And that's kind of what happened. And
I now feel like incredibly inadequate to be the host of this podcast. I mean, I try.
Look at these other hosts are doing. What the hell are we doing?
Oh man, you guys are living the dream. This is what I want to do. I want to get out of whatever I'm doing with life.
We are not your escape.
You guys are, yeah. You're leading the example of where I could be in tens of years.
Tens of listeners.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that people think that?
So, with all this, going to private sector, I was like, man, life is going to be way easier. And actually, it was just because it was very much like a startup organization, and it was just hauling ass. So I kind of built all of our defense stuff mostly from scratch, from the ground up. And the first year I traveled for about 50%. Last year I traveled for about 60% of the time until I kind of hired a bunch of people this tail end of this last year and this year, and I'm able to curtail that a little bit. But when I was trying to find something, like I got to do something for myself and invest in myself. I did undergrad and grad school after we already had children and things of that nature. I was just like, I need to, and my wife is a super big, proponent of that. Like she's more hippy dippy than I could think about. And she's like, yeah, do this for yourself. And I came across organic archer, Corey Hawk, and he's a really great bowyer. He's a master bowyer. He's been doing it for over 10 years, and he makes beautiful bows. I don't know if you know hickory, hackberry, osage, etc.
Can you take a second, if you can remember where you're going with this, but take a second to actually define what a bowyer.
To put it in my limited vocabulary, a bowyer is somebody that makes bows typically, in that traditional sense. That's somebody that typically makes a bow out of a single piece of wood with a single string, and that's kind of goes in the category of what we call a self bow, and that can be in the form of a flat bow, a long bow, have a little bit of recurve on the tips. It can have a shelf, it cannot have a shelf, to rest your arrow. I typically make a long bow that does not have a shelf, so you should actually shoot off your knuckle, or even like the Comanche style, like the short bows as well. So,
how do you become a master bowyer? I know I'm taking you far off the path of where you're.
Yeah, man. I like the principle of 10,000 hours to mastery, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's Malcolm
Outliers. And I think somebody that's now built thousands of bows by hand, like Corey, is definitely in that category. Also, if you call yourself a master bowyer, you're kind of a dipstick, right? Like
that's like calling yourself a guru.
Yeah, everyone else.
Yeah, that's why I'm pretty sure like my Instagram says like amateur bowyer and like half-assed bow hunter, because until somebody tells me I'm fairly good at it, I probably won't believe it. But Corey is definitely a master, and not only is he master at building bows, and not just like bows for hunting or for target, he makes historically accurate replicas and things of that nature as well. So he's very learned in the sociocultural aspects and design of bowyery, and he's born to teach. He's a great educator. So I went through basically a 3-day intensive seminar with him, and it's 12+ hour days, and you come out of it basically having a stave cut from a log to having a fully functional bow that you can shoot. And I was inspired. And since then, I've made about, between 25 and 30 bows.
Hell yeah.
Last couple of years. Most recently, I just donated a bow to Compton's traditional bow hunters here at ETAR, at the Eastern Traditional Archery Rendezvous, where I was this last weekend. I just got home from, as I explained to you guys a couple hours ago, right? But I actually donated that for a donation so that Compton's could raffle it off. And a kid, he was a youth bow. So a little Amish kid up in Pennsylvania actually won the raffle and is going home with that bow. So, but I donate, to some, the Coastal Conservation Association North Carolina out here too. I donated one in a raffle last year. I'll do the same thing this fall. A couple of veterans groups and things of that nature that we can give to. And actually, you guys, I know, are up in Wisconsin, but the Michigan traditional bow hunters actually have something called the Lost Bow Campaign. And it's a campaign to put bows in the hands of youth to empower them to, pick up the craft. And I donated, kids bow to them. I hope to continue to do that, to donate some kids longbows to those folks too. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
If I'm lucky enough to sell a couple here and there to pay for my next hunting trip, then it's, victory.
I'm really sorry to every former guest we've ever had, but this is the best intro we've ever had.
You got to dial me, man. I've been on the road all day, so like I'm like I don't know if I drink coffee
going 7 miles per hour, and I think
sorry
because you don't idle well, so we got to keep you moving.
You're between the lines, and you're gunning it, and it's beautiful, and I want to know more.
Yeah,
tell us more. Tell me another story.
So your cousin Derek is he shoots traditional bow.
Yes.
Which, by the way, your trans versus whatever the hell I said comment.
No, you
had
didn't
me
say
had
it.
my brain going.
Not trans bows, but traditional
I mean,
bows.
trans
Trad
bows are
bows.
very interesting. If you want to talk about, you don't know what end is what. It's very strange. Just kidding. No, you said something about sometimes the tip has a little recurve on it. I feel like that's like some sexual innuendo type of shirt you could make. Like, sometimes the tip has.
Yeah, we're in a very progressive crowd here.
Yeah,
Like,
You're just saying a lot.
The traditional crowd is very progressive.
The deer camp really comes out and starts coming out the inappropriate, jokes from like just general banter, and I can't help myself. And so I don't know if that's a thumbs down or thumbs up on the rating system of our podcast, but nonetheless,
it's better we don't find out.
I'm easily distracted, guys. No, but Derek's cousin, he's gone to Foam Fest with us, and he brings his trad bow, and it's like, man, you're making this look way easier than maybe it should be, because if I was lobbing these arrows at these 3D targets, I'm sure I would be missing. But when I was a kid, I would just get, again, I didn't idle well. And so I would be at my dad's on the weekend, and he had a couple like traditional bows. I don't know what they were, recurve longbow. I think they were recurve, and he will call later and tell me tomorrow after he listens
what
to
it
this.
was, yeah.
But I was
a recurve is a trad bow, right? So trad basically, if it doesn't have wheels on the ends, it's a trad bow. You're good.
So it was a traditional bow. I think it was probably recurve. And I was bored. I was like, as a kid, I'm like, that looks so freaking cool. Can I go shoot it? And so I think I definitely lobbed a lot of recurve arrows at a target block in my dad's backyard as a kid. And
Awesome.
The instinctive shooting was really cool. And then in high school, you shoot whatever the hell it was. I think something similar for like archery class in gym, which they did back in, it would have been 03, 04 for me. And so I fully want to go back down that path at some point, because
I feel like that would suit you well.
It really would. So my cousin just sent me it was my cousin Jeremy, who was just here over the weekend. He's not on social media in any real capacity. He doesn't respond to any messages. We're on like this big group family text. Like, Jeremy doesn't reply. Jeremy's the ghost, but he's there, and his wife replies, and she's the sweetest thing. Great mom. And but he shoots he just goes out in his jeans and gets his trad bow, and he shoots deer at 4 yards, in tall grass, and big deer nonetheless. He's a maniac.
Is this the cousin you went out with?
Yeah, he's tried to teach me some shit. He taught me about speed scouting, which is a thing. Anyway, I have a really high affinity and aspiration to go back on this path. I just know now is not the time for me. Like, I would be doing the deer a disservice when we talk about ethics. So I need to just wait for my time, and hopefully I can make it happen. But that time's coming.
It is tough, man, because you can go months really without shooting your compound and probably fall back into it with a few warm-up shops. And I'm not an awesome compound shooter, so but I think generally people can do that. But with a longbow or recurve, it is a lot steeper. The learning curve is steeper. The amount of practice it takes to be proficient takes a lot as well. I'll shoot every day that I can. In fact, this year to kind of like highlight the podcast, I did like the Bowyer Podcast July Cold Shot Challenge, just to help encourage, bow season's right around the corner in most states, to try to get people out there, because nobody's going to shoot one arrow typically, right? If you're going to go out and do a cold shot, you're probably going to get out there and get a few rounds in. And it was kind of compel people to do that. It also kept me honest, make sure that I didn't, half-ass it, and I'm continuing to try to work on my proficiency as well. But I'm definitely a close range guy. Like I enjoy some of my really long range rifles and stuff. Taking, shots at, 600, 700, 800 yards. I've got some, I've had great mentors in marksmanship, in the military, and then the government later on, and then outside for some of that. But I really love hunting within, 10 or 15 yards with a stick bow. And there's something special about that. There's a lot of eyes and ears on you when you're that close to, even if it's only 3 or 4 does, right, that are that close, and you're still trying to somehow stay out of the wind. And when you're that close, it's very hard to do so, much less be able to draw back and aim and get an arrow through one. So it's fun, but it's certainly challenging. I'm actually trying to dedicate this year to the self bow, to one of the bows that I made. And
Well,
I don't know, we'll see if
buddy,
I've got the fortitude.
I need you to break it down Barney style, as the Marine Corps would say. What's a self bow? I've not heard this term. I'm learning so much.
So self bow, right? So in like trad archery, you kind of have a long bow or recurve. Recurve has, the reflexed limbs.
So those are the styles of bow, right? Long bow, straight out, string
What
goes
does
between.
Jared Scheffler shoot, by the way?
Long bow.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Recurve, the limbs come
that
back.
Curvature thing,
yep.
right?
So then, it pulls your string. The limbs are coming back toward like the center line of the riser.
Exactly, right. And so that string will actually rest on that part of the limb, right? So with a long bow, your string is typically not touching the limb other than at the nocks on each end. Okay. A self bow is a bow made out of a single piece of wood. It's typically in a long bow fashion. It can still be in a recurve fashion. I'm sure there's some purists out there that will argue with me. But basically think of a bow, a stick that shoots pointy sticks that's made out of one single piece of wood and has one single string. That's right. So no laminates, nothing else, included there. And that's a self bow. So I've got, I made myself a nice snaky Osage bow earlier this year that I said, hey, I'm going to dedicate this year to the self bow. I've got a few pigs now this year, and I hope to knock down a couple of bears and whitetails this fall. So we'll see.
Heck yeah. So like Gary, sorry.
Go.
Well, my cousin Gary
yes.
that you alluded to before, that we've met before, and he's done, he's come to the shoot. Gary was the president of Traditional Bow Hunters of Wisconsin for a while, and he builds a whole bunch of bows, also youth bows, adult bows. He helped me build my first longbow, and he's building laminate bows. So what's happening is, you're crafting a riser, and then you're using thin pieces of varied woods and epoxy, and you build a light box, a big old plywood box with light bulbs in it to provide heat.
A literal light box.
And then you're literally building a clamp, and an air hose runs between all of your layers. So you're gluing up your layers of your
generator then?
You're sending air through
compressor,
it.
I mean?
Yeah, air compressor.
Okay.
So you're epoxying all these pieces that go into your limbs that are going to bend and flex. You got the air hose, you put the clamp on top, and then you're putting it in this box so that it can heat to the proper curing temperature. You run the air through the hose to make sure that there's no air in between.
Happen,
I got to build one with Gary.
Okay.
I'm not that old. We're not that old, but like I'm old enough where like my college professor in my woodworking class, I talked him into letting me build a bow for my final project. Everyone had to build like a chair or a table. And I was like, can I build a bow? And he was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
And then shortly after that, the weaponry thing in schools, institutions kind of went down the drain, but I got to build a bow for my final project. So that's how I did it. Gary helped me do that. But that's totally different than what Matt's doing with the self bow, where you're carving it out of one solid
I feel
piece.
like what you're talking about, Matt, feels more like when I see someone, well, not that I've seen someone do this. I feel like maybe I've watched some internet videos of people building a canoe.
So you pretty much did it.
Look, man, I have aspirations in the next 5 years to make a dugout canoe out of an old cypress tree out here.
Yes, can I help you? And
I will take all the sweat equity anyone will provide.
Let's get a Wisconsin tree, okay? And that will be our tie
drive for me. That's just it. I want to just do it in my backyard. And I live on the Neuse River, like it's my backyard. I want to be able to I'm finished. Toast a beer and just plop it in the river right here.
But here's the other thing about some of the. Is it the word? What epistemology is not the word. That's the study of knowledge. But something about the fact that you happen to have, about the various regions and the types of woods that are in certain regions and how that impacts the type of bow you would or wouldn't make and so forth. So, what inspired you, I guess, to go from shooting a compound for 15 years to down this path? Where was the spark, man? What happened?
Man, that's a good question. I missed during some of my time living, whether it was deployments or living overseas, I really missed out on some hunting for sometimes a couple years at a time, which super sucks. But a lot of people that were doing the same line of work were doing the same thing. But one thing I found is always being a little bit of a gear junkie is that with a compound, you find yourself like, oh, do I need to upgrade every year? I gotta be with the cool kids,
It does feel cool, let me tell you.
It really does, right? But then there's a certain amount of pressure. I got my new bow, but now I got to get the latest broadheads. The ones I used the last 5 years are awesome, but these must be better because somebody that runs up mountains and has muscles and a lot of followers probably says that it's the best. So I've got to do it, and I'm going to drink the same thing.
His name rhymes with
Ram. What's that?
His name rhymes with Ram.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of them, and he's awesome. He's a monster. I could never aspire to be that awesome, right? But that's one of many, right? Like, and he set the example. So everybody's got to be cool now, right? Has to run ultra marathons, be Jack, have a great beard, which I don't. I've got the beard of like a 12-year-old Norwegian girl, and do all this. But it's the keeping up with like the gear and this like weird societal pressure. And I've got this saying that's like community is greater than society, because I think society really kind of sucks ass, but community can be really something special if we preserve it. But it's also almost an endangered species, right? So going back to the question before my ADD kicks in once again, I wanted to simplify some things. And if you start at the bare bottom of a very basic stick that shoots other sticks, you don't really have that desire or are compelled to, I got to upgrade this, because you deliberately made that decision, to simplify it. And then I've got some great pals that make homemade arrows out of wood, and I've got, next year, maybe I'll go to like somebody that makes arrows out of river cane and use that. I don't really have a desire to make my own arrows, because like that fine artistic tuning thing is just not my jam. But I really like making bows. And if I've got other cool guys that can make arrows, that I can support them also and keep it simple and still put some meat in the freezer, I'll be pretty happy.
There's something cool you said before that I want to go back to, and
so many cool things.
Your hat inspired it a little bit. You said, you had a background in the military, and you said you enjoy the long range shooting, but then you also enjoy what this, self bow provides, which is this strange, artistic, intimate relationship with like your arrow and how it's all close range. And I could be wrong, but I read a few G. Fred Asbell books, and I think he once described instinctive shooting or shooting a traditional bow as like, and I think about this as compound, similar to like a rifle, where it's like a more complex process. What's the range? What's this? Aim that way. And it's like this whole process, but how Asbell like explained it was like, if you hand someone a baseball and you stand across from them and say, throw the baseball to me, they don't think about how the trajectory and the gravitational, like they just throw it. And like your experience in throwing it brings the ball to them. And that's how traditional archery is. You're not thinking about this. You just know the flight of your arrow because you've practiced it and you're intimate with your piece. You just know it. It's like throwing a baseball. You're not thinking about how hard you need to throw it. You just throw it to them. And then once you get in tune with like your traditional equipment, that's how he had explained is you just know like this range, that range, the flight of my arrow. You've seen it thousands of times. The mastery, the 10,000 shots, the 10,000 hours. You know the arc of the arrow. So is it going to go over or under that log? Is it, what's it going to be at 5 yards? What's it going to be at? And I think that's so cool that you mentioned like that tactical, like long range shooting thing that you enjoyed. But there's also this piece of your brain that craves this like just organic, like this is what it is.
It's and in different archers, particularly in the traditional domain, have different styles, right? Like I think the most accurate archers are usually guys that are shooting like a 3-under shot. So like you've got your knock of the arrow knocked on the string and you've got 3 fingers under that, right? Most traditional guys shoot a split finger. So 1 on top of the knock and 2 on bottom. I shoot traditional and everybody's like, oh, the traditional is the cool way. It's like the more primitive. I just do it because I've never tried anything else with any success. But typically the most accurate guys and gals that are shooting trad are typically those 3-under shooters. Maybe one of these days I'll holler at like Tom Klum or Newman down in South Carolina or one of those guys and get some proper training. But in the meantime, I'll keep shooting instinctively like Asbell, but not nearly as cool. And, but look, man, I'm staying within 20 yards all fall. Like if it's outside 20 yards, I'm probably not going to throw an arrow at it. So there are certainly limitations to that.
I have lots more questions, but I wanted to interject my Stoic bullshit.
Let's hear it.
Which is the less you want, the more powerful you are. But essentially, like I think Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having fewer wants. And that goes back to like the coolness factor of wanting the latest and greatest. And I could just as easily. I have a personal situation that not situation.
Do you want to talk about it?
I have a personal I'm a person of extremes, and I tend to be very decisive. And the extremes are like I could just as easily just drive a 1982 fuck all, but I also want the 2024 with the biggest screen in the vehicle. Like I want to go trad, but I also want the latest bow. I just want extremes. Something is wrong with me. I want to be the safest human, but I also want to go skydiving every day. Like, I have some weird fucking problem. I don't know what that says about me. But yeah, I just it's a very
Look,
weird.
I think one is what your soul is telling you to do one thing and society is telling you to do another. To be honest, man, I think I'll get on soapbox, so I'll try to step off it really quickly. I think we're institutionalized to think about the next coolest, shiniest object with all the tech, but it's in our dunna, to quote one of my kids' movies. It's in our dunna to want to simplify it. Right?
Don't tell me my business.
Yeah, yeah. To want to simplify that a little bit, right? Like, this is going to sound mean, but like one of the traditional guys, an old guy I talked to, he was like, he goes, I don't think anything is wrong with compound shooters or crossbow guys or whatever. And I would argue the crossbow side a little bit, but because I look, man, I've got a bear archery approach in my closet right now. It was like Fred Bear offers Bear Archery offers like a military discount through some of its vendors. Anybody that does that will have my business. Like I'm a big supporter of it. The Bear Kodiak is amazing. Recurve. But somebody once said, it's like, I don't have anything against the compound side. He goes, but a compound bow, it's very accurate. It's a great tool, but it's soulless. And a longbow or a trad bow has a soul. There's heart to it, I'm like, oh, well, it's beautiful how you articulated that. I don't, I still had fun with my compound bow, but I really love the trad bow, and I love bow hunting. I've always loved bow hunting, but I don't know if I necessarily loved archery, like just shooting in my backyard and stuff. But when I converted to shooting traditional kit, I actually I think I fell in love or refell in love with archery in addition to bow hunting.
That's cool. I
That's
think
such an interesting little dichotomy. Is like, are you a hunter or are you a bow hunter?
Because I'm a hunter first.
There's so many people who do both, and I see myself as my brain instantly. I don't think about like arching, like being an archer, shooting. I am like 100% in the game of like what are mature bucks like. I like that game. The bow is just the means to the ends. Where there's other people who are like, man, I shoot every day. My bow is dialed. I'm shooting out to 100 yards. I'm like, I should do that. I should definitely do that.
I like just the adventure. And so this is kind of funny. And it's too bad Greg isn't here for this episode. I think he would have enjoyed it. He's traveling for work. He's been
He's definitely
busy.
an archer.
He's an archer. But he invited me. So this is a fun story. Greg Tubbs invited me to go shoot league because one of their people wasn't there that night. And it was at our local archery shop, Whale Tails in Dousman, where we go. And I was like, dude, I don't have any arrows. I'm not prepared to step in. I don't even have arrows. So I go to Whale Tails. They sell me arrows on the spot, cut them. They're like the lightest, as the rancher would say, like non-adult arrows, like Twizzlers that money could buy. And I was like, yeah, whatever you say, Mr. Bow Shop guy. Like, okay, these are the ones. I don't know anything. And I shot and I did fine, actually. And I probably didn't touch my bow in like 8 months from that point. And then, clearly I didn't have any fucking arrows, It was the middle of winter or whatever it was. And, it was fine. I don't think we won or anything, but like I didn't biff or like suck shit. However, the point I'm making is like, I never have cared about the technical stuff. I just care that I want to go do the fun stuff. And I've learned over the years that you have to practice. That's very important. But like, I couldn't tell you I could barely tell you the draw weight of my bow or the mechanics of it. I don't even know how many fletches my arrow had. I don't know. But I know that when I shoot and I put it where it goes, like I know that, but I don't know. Everyone's like, "Oh, what's your blah blah blah?" I don't know. You're asking the wrong. Go ask Greg. He will tell you what my shit is because he helped me figure it out. I'm like this with all things in my life except for like marketing. Then I'm a psychopath.
I was gonna say because then you like have this whole other side where you innately care about every like tiny little detail, and you're phenomenally successful at it.
It's really weird, but I just love being out and like the even the sight of like whitetail fur does something to my organic spirit.
I can see that.
Yeah, I just went from 6 to noon,
In your defense, that's a sweet ass whitetail in the background though. So
just that color of whitetail fur and seeing hard horns and like
so many innuendos.
Dead leaves, being in a tree, touching trees. I don't mean it in a weird fucking, tree hugging way. I just mean like, God, I love the spirit of nature and adventure. And I will always take the fucked up path to get somewhere. And Derek knows that I have no issue with that.
You're
no
a beast.
Qualms.
You're a beast, man.
It's not even beast. It's more dipshittery than anything else.
No,
like,
it's just that you enjoy
happy to be there.
No, you enjoy the process as much as the process is not your like foresight, like what you like anticipate. Like you enjoy all the processes.
Yes. And
when you're in it, you enjoy it.
Yes. And that's why I'm like, I know I will get to a trad bow. I know my path will lead me to that because ultimately that's where I want to be. And like Bear being a sponsor of this show, fucking sweet. They have a lot of those.
And they make great ones, man. They really do. And there's so much history behind that, right? Like go pick up bows on the Little Delta or Fred Beer's Field Notes and you'll be inspired to go like,
did you read that?
Get one right away.
We were talking about this before we hit record because we were talking about books that we're reading. And I talked about, I picked up this Jim Posewitz books because I'm trying to learn more about conservation to be a good steward of the audience that we have when we're building and so forth. But you, Matt, you've done a lot of reading on like, traditional bows and so forth. Like, so what, I don't know, like Derek talked about this process of him building a bow in wood shop class or whatever it was called back in the day when you could make weapons in school and I was making little race cars. But like, what is your general process? Okay, let me back up. A, how many bows are you making a month, a year? B, what is your process? C, how different is it from bow to bow?
Yeah, so good questions. You have to remind me of what your questions are as we go through.
I remember, I will tell you.
Yep. You can remember one at a time. How many a month or year? Look, right now I'm probably doing 1 or 2 a month.
That's really good.
So that's my, like, it's turned into almost like therapy, like, right. Like I can, go outside, even if I can only gonna spend 15 minutes. Right. And I use all hand tools. Right. So the only time I break out machinery or power tools is, I'll get out like an orbital sander at the end, right, for finishing. But generally it's, a draw knife, a rasp. For those that don't know what a rasp is, that's like the big file that farriers, like guys that give horses pedicures, that's what they're using on there, and that's what we're using for removing wood. But really that's the extent of it, right?
Matt, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but like to get your stave, are you like buying staves? Are you cutting trees, drying them, and cutting them into staves? Like, how does that even initial process?
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go back. All right. So stave. So we start out.
Big block.
There's a tree. Right. So there's a tree.
It's a fancy word for a small part of the tree.
How long?
Trees and witches are made of wood. I go the tree route, and so a lot of times, honestly, so out here, so some of the best bow woods in North America are Osage and yew. Osage is mostly grown in the Midwest. You guys have it in Wisconsin, and then where I grew up in Missouri. And basically all the way kind of really probably to Ohio or so. And then as far west as maybe Oklahoma, I believe. Really great bow wood. When I grew up, I called Osage hedge. So it wasn't until like I became a semi-adult that I called it Osage. And then yew is from the Pacific Northwest, but also like different oaks, different maples, hickories, a lot of citrus trees, fruit trees, eastern red cedar, all make pretty doggone good bows as well. So out here, I'm cutting down hickory, some smooth and shagbark hickory, but also pecan, which is a type of hickory, which make really great bows. And for Osage, so far, I've had to purchase staves. So with the ones I cut down a tree or cut down big straight limbs so that we can stave the tree and then split that into staves. And the staves need to dry typically for about a year. And then there are ways to actually like expedite the drying process through fire hardening and a dry box or heat box and things of that nature. But generally, you can season them for over the course of a year or more. Osage, I'm typically buying from some folks I know. They'll have a stave that's already been debarked a lot of times. And then I'll get that Osage stave shipped to me and I'll start making bows that way.
What's the cost?
Go ahead.
What's the cost of something like that? Like $100, $500?
It differs, right? So, when you think about it, a stave is just a chunk of a log, so it's basic, but what it is, it's also seasoned. And typically it's been sealed on each end with either like wood glue or a polyurethane or some sort of coating to keep the splitting from happening throughout the duration of the log as it dries, but also keeps the bugs out. Fortunately, Osage is very rot resistant and bug resistant. So it's less upkeep, which is probably another reason why it's such a sought after bow wood. But a stave will be anywhere from like $100 to $250 for that piece of wood, depending on who you're getting it from and how choice they might claim or not claim that it is.
Is there some sort of like grading process? Like when you go to buy, is it just like you take?
It's arbitrary in my opinion, to be honest. But you can look at it and you're like, man, you want like really thick growth rings. If those growth rings are really tight, you're going to have a greater risk of that bow breaking under pressure, right? So like you can make furniture and doors and picture frames and all that stuff out of all sorts of woods. But if it's kinetic, right? Think kinetic, it's moving. So like a bow, axe handles, hatchet handles, hammer, handles of things like that. You need to have, a good, reference of tension, inflection, and also specific gravity, which is like the hardness of the bow as well. So there's certain things you look for, but a lot of times for bowyers are looking for a really straight piece of wood that has very thick growth rings, which you'll look at the ends and see those growth rings, right? And it's going to be an easier piece of wood that's going to work, and it's going to be less prone to breaking during the tillering process. The tillering process is when you're making that piece of wood, then bow, right? So you're bringing it down, it's flat and straight, and you want it to arc, and you want symmetry within that arc typically, right? And depending on the style of longbow you're making will differentiate where there's more bend in the tips or the full part of the limbs and so on and so forth, right? Or whether you have a working handle or a handle that bends. But yeah, so typically I'm going to harvest wood locally, or I've got some friends here in North Carolina that might be harvesting some too, and I can get something from them, or we'll do a trade or something like that. Or for a lot of Osage, I will purchase from somebody that lives more Midwestern and have them send it out here. Hopefully this winter I can go visit folks at home and get a bunch of Osage and just truck back here to save me some of the cost in the future. But I just harvested a whole bunch of pecan, which will probably be what I make a lot of bows out of in mid to late 2025. Just going to make really great bow wood. So from that process, right, you've got your wood. It's now made into a stave. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do your first bit of wood reduction. So you're going to outline, you've got a front of a bow and a back of the bow, or the belly and the back rather. So the back is the part of the bow that faces away from you, and the belly is the part that faces your belly, right? So the back of that bow is typically the side of that wood or those growth rings that are facing the bark. Okay. So you get down to that level, you'll kind of draw a design of your bow. And there's lots of historical literature from Europe and from indigenous cultures and things of that nature in North America that highlight designs of bows that have been proven. And you can kind of get it generally around there as far as a design on the back of that piece of wood. And then you're going to turn it over to the belly, and you're going to start doing your wood reduction to start getting your thickness and your shape and design and things of that nature. When you get to where you can just barely get a bend out of that piece of wood, you're going to do with something that's called a floor tiller or a long string tiller, and you're going to hang it on something called tillering tree, which is basically just a pulley. You hang it on something on a wall, you have a pulley, and you're starting to get a little bit of bend because wood, like water, has memory. And you're trying to get that. You can't just bend it to full draw all at once, or you'll be brittle and you'll break it. So you do it in increments. And then you're typically measuring, centimeters or, inches at a time, sometimes millimeters at a time of where you need to remove more wood. So when you go from a draw knife, then you start using a rasp to remove less wood at a time. And then you will reduce down to then like a card scraper or a cabinet scraper, which is just basically a metal shaped card. And you're removing wood millimeters or less at a time to get that symmetry and that nice bow shape from your wood, right? And then the things that you're ultimately looking at, right, is what do you want your draw length to be and what do you want your draw weight to be? You want to force the wood. You're like, hey, somebody told me they want a 47-pound bow at 28 inches. Well, this piece of wood only wants to go to, it wants to be either 55 or it wants to be 42, right? If you move too much, if you start taking a little bit of wood to get that happy medium at 47, the tiller's all screwed up, right? You can't really force the wood to do what you want. You typically do have leeway, within 5 pounds of either side though, right? And I have found, just as bowyers have found throughout the ages, that if you try to force wood to do what you want it to do, it will break and beat your ass. And after, 20 hours of labor, there will probably be some tears or profane language involved.
That's not a good feeling, is it?
No, it's terrible. I mean, I got friends that they're very stoked. They're like, I get my failed pieces and I put them in the corner so they remind me of the work I did and how I need. I take mine straight out to the burn pile in my yard and I light them on fire and burn them right away. There's zero stoicism in that. I'm like, I get rid of it right away. I'm so mad and upset, So,
oh man,
sounds like a good therapy session for how you deal with the problem.
Most of the time it's therapeutic. Other times it's enraging, right?
Yeah, that's okay. You got to have that release. It's like a haircut. You can only take so much off, but you can't get it back.
Very much. Yeah, very true.
And if the barber fucks it up and you don't have any hair, you're like, you just ruined my life.
And there's ways to compensate sometimes, right? If you're a couple of pounds lower, you can heat treat wood, which will usually help add a little bit of strength and power. So you might be able to add a couple of pounds of draw weight to it. You can reflex those tips a little bit, a couple of inches out, and maybe you'll be able to get a couple pounds back. But generally, if you've gone too far with the wood removal and you're too lighter than what you wanted, you're typically stuck within a couple of pounds of that weight.
What kind of finishing things are you doing? So you carve one down, you tiller it out, you've got it all, you got the poundage you want at the draw you want. What are you doing as far as like finishing that wood? It should be all dried out. Are you putting any sort of sealing, lacquer, like what?
Absolutely. A type of sealer is paramount, especially if you live someplace that's humid. I live in North Carolina and you're moist all the time, right? It's just,
oh yeah,
we're always damp. So having some sort of sealant is really paramount. And, Osage is more hydrophobic, while hickory and pecan and walnut like to absorb moisture. So different woods also require more coating of sealant. What I like to do, because I get a little hippy dippy about it, is I seal bows with a mixture of tallow, beeswax, and pine pitch. It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. And because it's natural, right? Like, polyurethane is great. It's an awesome sealer. Put, 3 or 4 coats of poly on there and you're gonna have a nice glass looking finish. It's gonna be shiny. It's gonna look just very smooth throughout. It's gonna be beautiful. But I also really don't think that our skin should be in contact with poly stuff all the time. Skin's contact with, some of the chemicals. Teak oil is really awesome. Teak oil, it typically takes a full day or 2 to dry. So if you put, say, 6+ coats of teak oil, after you finish your bow, you're then going 6 more days or whatever. So like every morning or every night or whatever, you're putting on another coating of teak oil. I really like teak oil as a coating. But what I usually use is something a little bit more natural, which is that compound of either beef tallow and beeswax and pine pitch, or I've got some bear fat that I've mixed with beeswax and pine pitch that I'll use as well. For the bows. And then I'll use it, I can finish them with different dyes or some colors and things of that nature. I do typically try to keep them a little bit more rustic and natural. Some guys are really big, like finishing nerds. And I say that like in a really great way. There's folks like Corey Hawk, Waylon Olive out of Swiftwood Bows. They do backings with sturgeon skin and kangaroo leather and all of these amazing things. But they are, I would say masters of their craft. Mine are typically a little bit more rustic. But I think they look pretty and shoot straight. So that's good.
Is that combination of finish that you came up with?
That's out of like historical literature, actually. Yeah.
And it's been used, for
probably eons, at this point, right? For sealing different, for sealing teepees and canvas, not canvas, but like tanned hide tents. They used a sealant similar to that.
Water off them and make them water repellent, water resistant.
Yeah, absolutely. Boots, moccasins, all wood tools, stuff like that. I'm sure that there's some science in there with a ratio that I could change, but it's typically for me is kind of like a 1-to-1-to-1. But it works right now, and if I have to put more thought into it, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much.
If someone, Matt, were like, just curious about this process, much like maybe Derek was in his woodworking class, where he had a lot of good tools and resourcing and infrastructure around him to do so. Maybe someone doesn't want to become a Bowyer per se, where they're doing this all the time, and maybe they would. But like, how would you help someone get into this to just try? I do know a few people that have built their own bows. I'm like, what? You built your own. Wow. Like that's incredible. Here you are building, several a year. I think you said 4 a month or something like that, or 2 to 4 a month. And maybe that's an average, but Eric, here's how I would tell you to build a bow. It's going to go terribly.
No, this is great information. So there is a lot of really good information. Like one is joining your local traditional bow hunters or traditional archery club, because there's probably going to be some graybeard in there that does it. They probably don't have Instagram or YouTube or anything like that. But that's what I talk about a lot on the Bowyer podcast is, kind of reverting or reinvigorating some of the old ways, but also finding mentors and encouraging mentors to gather up mentees and teach them some of these skills, right? Because I think that having good mentors is kind of like an endangered species right now as well, right? So I think having that in there. So I think when you're, a state, traditional archery club or local traditional archery club, there's probably going to be a graybeard in there that can help out. But there's also some great seminars out there. I think it's Pinewood Longbows teaches bow making. Corey Hawk of Organic Archer teaches bow making. He's the one that taught me. He's still wealth of knowledge. I literally message him every week for advice on things.
You shared some of his, is he the one that has like a really robust Instagram where maybe you shared some of his stuff or something? I've seen you share
probably yeah. Clay Hayes is amazing, right? He won that. I'm watching any reality TV, but it was Alone season, whatever, a few years ago. He's amazing. He also does classes. Waylon Olive of Swiftwood Bows is out here in Western North Carolina, and his bows are amazingly. They're beautiful. Like they're really, really beautiful as well. YouTube's, all those guys I just mentioned have YouTube channels. They're really good. Dan Santana Bows probably has, to me, like the largest library of archive of how to make bows, like start to finish, from whether you're using a PVC pipe, an oak board from Lowe's or Home Depot, harvesting a piece of Eastern red cedar, organic or exotic woods.
Can you say it again? What was it?
Dan Santana Bows.
Okay.
On YouTube. Amazing, wealth of information. All these guys typically also respond on like Instagram messages and things of that nature. And they're very, I say all these guys because they're very good about bringing forward information if you ask as well. Also, Cubby Hoover from Cubberson's Longbows. He was on episode 2 of the Bowyer Podcast. He doesn't teach any courses, but he's got information out there. He's got a little YouTube, and he's a wealth of information. If you look on his Instagram or some of his videos, or send him a message, because he's a Midwestern, he's super nice and wants to help people.
Well, that brings me to my other question, which is, you mentioned Cubby, and I recognize the name because I remember making that cover and description and so forth on the production side for the network. But let's talk about the Bowyer Podcast. You talk about these old ways, and what I think is really neat is that Zach Hansen, the host of the OKS Trapper podcast, is who introduced us and did that initial text thread, and here we are. I appreciate this ideology and actionable way to harken back to this old way of life. And I think on the trapper side, there's a lot of woodmanship that can be learned and add value to any modern whitetail hunter, so to speak. And also, like, now I really want to go trapping for a beaver out in Idaho. Zach. And I also then think, like, kind of you're doing something in a very similar vein as this going back in time kind of thing. And there's this itch that society has to do so for valid reasons, given the climate of everything right now. But why do you talk about the podcast, the ethos of that, and kind of what you're looking to achieve there, and some of the guests that maybe you have had on or are looking to have on, and some of these teachery type folks or others and so forth? I just talk about the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, because I just don't think of it. My tiny brain doesn't work in that way. So
tiny, huge brain.
it was really delivered out of some of our conversations, but it's not like an altruistic move. It's almost selfish, because it gives me an excuse to talk to people who are way cooler than me. But the kind of the nexus behind it, right, is because, well, Eric, you asked me, like, what made me want to go to like making self bows and do something more simple after shooting a beautiful compound bows for 15 years, right? It's trying to revert to something that's a little bit more simple, without the societal pressure, institutionalized pressure of upgrading and doing new tech and all this stuff every year. And it's because I think we've all, to include myself, look, I work in aerospace, for crying out loud. Like, tech and shiny shit is like my life, and I don't know how a caveman like me is doing it all the time, but somehow they still let me in the office from time to time. But I think that we are losing culture. I feel like we're losing family structure. I feel like we're losing community. And it's for a number of reasons, right? We can blame it on social media. We can blame it on politics. We can blame it on religion. We can do whatever, right? But a lot of this needs to be owned by the individuals or the group of individuals. And I think finding ways to reinvigorate some age-old traditions like bow making, like gardening and homesteading, whether it's, working on an old car, or I had Francesca Ritchie, who is a master leathersmith with exotic animal hides and leathers on episode, I think 3. I've got Sam Curtis of Polite But Dangerous Tools coming on, who's amazing bladesmith, makes beautiful, beautiful knives and very, very, good working, sharp, hard steel. Tracy Chevron, who's basically from Bastion Head, who makes all these great wooden, wood utensils and bowls and spoons, but he also makes his own draw knives, which I personally use. It's makers that are bringing back something that might be a little bit primitive or traditional or rustic, that if we don't keep some of these traditions alive, they're going to be lost, right? And heaven forbid something happens someday where we don't have our shiny screens and the confines of 4 walls and fluorescent lights and the golden handcuffs, but we need to have skills. We're going to be in a really tough spot, right? So I think it's important to try to bring some of that back, to try to encourage people to learn new things, to get outside. And I say at the end of the podcast, you're like, get outside, get dirty, and learn something new. I think that we need to help be better stewards of community over society. I think we need to learn new skills that are probably perishable. I think we need to seek out mentors. It's hard, right? Like there's an awkwardness to talking to people nowadays, especially folks that are like 10 and 15 years younger than we are, right? We're all like teetering around that 40-year mark. And like, it's harder for, I think, younger generations to just have a conversation that's not associated with a smartphone or a computer or something that's online. So I think we need to find a way to lower that barrier to entry for some of these things too. So it's being brave enough to ask somebody that could potentially be a mentor, but it's also encouraging potential mentors who might not even know that they could be a mentor for something, to reach out and teach somebody something new. And I don't care if it's changing a light bulb or making a bow by hand, carving a dadgum canoe out of a cypress tree, learning how to tie your own fishing lures on a piece of line, right? Or starting a chainsaw when it's giving you a hard time. I think these are all things that are perishable, and we need to find a way to maintain them. My wife's master, she got her master's in cultural sustainability, and her focus was on the endangerment of the Venetian dialetto. We lived in Italy for like 3 years. And they highlighted that when you lose some of your language, especially like a dialect, you lose some of your culture. Well, I think these skills are very much part of our culture too, right? And if we lose them, we're losing a part of us. And I think that's sad. So
we're a very proud culture, and a lot of that pride comes from being able to build things and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I took my nephew out fishing for catfish the other day, and we talked about tying lures on, and I'm like, dude, you're learning from the worst guy, but I know a couple of knots from my childhood youth. And I learned from my grandpa how to swing a splitting axe, not a chopping axe. There's a difference, and knowing that difference is important. How to swing an axe properly to split wood became quite the addiction and outlet for me as a young teen with lots of rage. It was great, but I didn't blow my back out. And anytime I see someone splitting wood the wrong way, I'm like, you're just working too hard, buddy. You're gonna blow your back out your way. And like those types of skills are awesome. Like having a sense of accomplishment, building things, doing something in your hands. It does something for the soul that, like these other things. I'm a digital marketer. I build digital dust. And if the internet goes out like it did when the world, had a global IT outage, none of that shit can matter. But building real things in life feels different. And you're right. The world may come to that at some point, honestly. Like Rome, the Roman Empire lasted, we're a quarter of the way into how long the Roman Empire lasted in the United States, and it already feels like we're in pretty trepidation grounds. So, like, I don't know if we're going to make it as long as they did, but, whatever comes up must come down, and we're the greatest nation on the planet, but shit, we'll see how long that lasts, insofar as our ability to maintain some sort of like healthy community in society. Having these other abilities so I went on a run yesterday. I hadn't been running for maybe a
long
weeks.
Run.
Well, that's why I went on a run. I hadn't been running as much as I would prefer to be running, especially in the summer heat. It's been just busy. And so I went on a run yesterday thinking I was going to do 1.5 miles, 2 miles, just a quick little run around the block kind of thing. I went 5 miles because I went 3 and I said, "You're not done, you pansy fuck. Keep going." And I felt like I need to punish myself for having not ran. And what I like about running for me personally, I hate running. I hate it, but I like the mental thought process that develops on any given run. And the one that developed at this point in time was, it's important to be strong. And I feel like I need to be physically fit and strong and just in case I need to protect my family. Like this whole, my arm hurts, my back hurts. Like, get it together, man. Some shit might be coming down the pike. You need to be able to defend your family. You need to get strong. You need to start figuring this shit out. I'm not super weak. I'm not super strong. I've not been in the best shape recently because of some bullshit injuries from being a 30-year-old dipshit. But like, that was an interesting thought. And it comes off the curtails of the political landscape and all the stuff. But like, yeah, how to carve things, how to build things, how to do stuff. I built shelves in my garage. I never felt greater. I'm like, these are the dumbest shelves ever. Anybody could build these shelves. Like, this isn't a proud moment, but I felt like Tim the Two Man. I was like,
dude. But it gives you a sense of primal accomplishment, right?
Yes,
and you don't have to know it all yourself, right? And that's why community and good friends and folks are important.
And my good friend helped me. He's like, he helped me with one, and then I was like, I got it. I'll build the next one. And my mother-in-law came over, and she's like, "Did you build that second one on your own?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not a complete idiot."
I think that's by far the favorite part of my job, being a visual. I'm a visual arts teacher, which a lot of people would say is futile in the world of technology and
Look
this
at what
and
you
that.
made right here,
But
behind you.
But seeing kids realize the importance and the power behind creation, like you physically putting in effort and like thinking through the process and then creating it and seeing what 20 or 30 or 40 hours of actual work accomplished, like seeing their face, that I feel like it's a game changer, right? It changes their view on like, holy shit.
Man, Albert Einstein's one of the most brilliant minds of any of our times or history's times, right? And he harps on the power of imagination on many more times, and he talks about physics and calculus and chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. I think that he's not only brilliant, but that means he's wise, because we have to have that creative side in us, like that's balance. And without imagination, we have no innovation.
That's true.
I agree. And I will take all this and bring it to the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, where he goes, "I have made fire." Like, he got to a place where like you need to have the most basic skills, and making a fire was one of them. That was like the biggest deal ever, and he had this huge sense of accomplishment and pride because he built something that we take for granted in modern society. What the fuck do you know that can build a fire from scratch without a tool or a thing or whatever? It's a big deal, So anyway,
it really is. Man, I was at this event early in the year called Winter Strong by Sornex, and somehow I had some friends that thought I was cool enough to go to that, and there were some real badasses in there. I got a buddy named Rick Spicer who's out of
his name Brick.
Rick Spicer.
Okay. I was like, whoa.
Man with
and the guy's like 5'7", and he's like totally jacked and just has the heart of gold, and he can make fire from like 2 pieces of wood in like 30 seconds.
Oh yes, that's kind of boner.
I mean, I tell him that when I talk to him too, because
I got some more wood for you over here, buddy.
Oh my gosh, it's really, I mean, that's what he does. He teaches bushcraft and all this other stuff, but he's also like just this amazing dude.
How neat.
Great hunter. He makes amazing like backpack quivers and all these other things. He's just like man of many skills. But like, the fact that he's like, I make fire. Like he like looks at 2 pieces of wood and all of a sudden it's like flames. I'm like,
spontaneous combustion's got nothing on me.
One second. My dogs are being assholes.
I can hear the dogs.
It's all about showing the wood who's boss. Just give it the right look.
Just bang some sticks together and you're good to go.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny. I have a really fun song I'm going to end everything on once we're ready. I'm just texting back a buddy right now.
All right, I'm back. I had to kick out all my fans from the front porch.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I've got 2 mutts. One mutt is a healer American Eskimo mix. He's the one with that really shrill, annoying bark. And then I've got a Chihuahua Dachshund mix that was a rescue, and then my sweet, amazing dog. Charity knows I'm talking about is a Spinone Italiano or an Italian Spinone, so a wannabe bird dog.
Nice.
Too many, man. I can't say no in this house. I've got 3 dogs. I've got 4 chickens for our eggs, and then my wife was hiking early this year, and she stumbled across some little bald thing, and she took a picture of it, and she's like, "What should I do?" It's like, "I don't know, bring it home. We'll give it to like wildlife and have them fix it." Well, now it's a full-size rat that lives in our house, and its name is Tui, and is a very significant part of the family, I guess. So I don't know. I make no decisions. I just show up every day.
I'm with you.
The number of wild animals my wife has brought home. Yeah. Cats brought home a snake today that we quickly took in and got a terrarium set up for.
What's the gardener?
Snake had
or
some.
A gopher
Yeah, it's just a little gardener, like 14-inch gardener.
Dude, those things stink.
Oh yeah. When you handle it, I mean, they put out some pheromones or whatever that they're alerted.
Yeah.
But we went to the lake and swam a little bit with some friends and came home and it had escaped. Thank goodness. So it was gone.
So, am I allowed to ask questions as the guest?
I mean, sure. What do you got?
I don't know. I didn't want to break the okayest rules.
You're a host. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, we're all hosts.
What are hunting plans this fall? I gotta
plans. What are plans?
Yeah, I don't know. What are you gonna? What kind of meat are you gonna put in the freezer this year?
That's a great question.
Derek's got more plans.
Do you want to start?
My plan. I have a trip to Seattle and Orlando planned for September and October. I have 3 kids' birthdays in the month of September. In October, I have one of those 2 trips. I think it's the Seattle one. I don't really know. My wife's birthday and our wedding anniversary. So plans are.
So you're looking at some beef, maybe a little more beef.
I'm planning on hunting the shit out of the first 2 weeks of November for the rut and then gun season. Other than that, I'll be lucky to.
You're not gonna have
I'm going to be very vicarious this year. Plans though, Derek, Tyler, and I were talking today. We have got to buy your plane tickets. So did you get a text from him about the dates?
I got a text from Tyler.
I told him to not text Greg because Greg's a grumpy old man. I've bothered him twice about it. I said, just text Tyler.
I told him the opposite.
Derek.
I tell him the dates. I said, these are the dates that I'm good. But Tyler, just double check with Greg to make sure. Greg. But there was a discrepancy. Because then Greg texted me grumpily. Sorry, Greg. You seemed irritated by maybe what Tyler had said.
Yes.
Because I said, I'm good.
Twice now.
I'm good through Monday. To come back the 21st of October. I took an extra day. And Greg was like, you're not taking that extra day, are you? I was like, well, I'm going to take it if you're going to take it. And he's like, well, let me look at the schedule. Yeah, we don't have anything. I can take it. And I was like, okay, tell Tyler. That's the dates. But we're going for... Eric is sending us out to Oregon for Blacktail, which will be really cool.
With another book author, our buddy
Lyndon Lauren,
who wrote The Hunter's Hellspan.
He invited us out there, which is so fantastic.
Very neat.
What's the name of this book? I don't think I've heard of it. I got to look it up.
Hunter's Hellspan.
Really cool
guy. Which just
guy.
talks about making, look, if you love hunting so much and you want to hunt longer, take good care of yourself. So Lyndon would not, I don't know that he would disapprove of these beers, but he would certainly be drinking water as a guest.
Mineral water, maybe.
And I'm happy for him with that. He's got far more discipline than I have. Although, I'm swirling around the idea of just jettisoning all booze in my life because of what I'm trying to accomplish, and it just doesn't do as much good as it does for me. I have no poor relationship with booze or alcohol. I have a very healthy relationship. It just
doesn't help you.
There's just nothing that
it's
value
not
add.
Really benefiting.
It's more detracting than adding.
But to that.
Yes, exactly. Well, here we are.
So Wisconsin whitetails, Oregon blacktails. Sounds awesome.
And then I'll be down in Illinois also chasing whitetails.
Right on.
I'm just going to be I was going to hang cell cams on a property that I'm going to be hunting, and we had to put in for those conservancy tags.
Yes, we do. I meant to text you.
Fuck with it tonight.
Yeah.
However, one of them didn't connect to the server, or like the SIM card wasn't good, or something like that, or it wasn't not good. It wasn't activated, so I had to like reach out to support. And so the day I was going to go, that didn't happen. So I was like, I'm not going to go hang one cam if I have two. This is stupid. I'll just wait till I get both. Now both are synced, and I have yet to go. And now at this point, I'm kind of like, I really don't want to deal with mosquitoes. So I'm back for a data point, and they're sitting above my microwave right now. Both cams.
My wife just found us a babysitter who will watch both kids for $10 an hour. You tell me the day. I'm just going to come for support. I'm not going to say a word.
Some paddling
I just want to come with you.
Yeah.
Just figure out a day and I'll get.
I kind of don't know where. You've seen the area that I've been hunting. I really don't have a good concept of where I should be hanging these things in that thick, nasty, tall grass. Like, I don't know what those trees are. I don't know what those shrubbery trees are that grow out of that tall grass on river.
Buckthorn or alders?
Alders.
Do they grow at an angle or straight up?
No, they grow at like angles. There's like lots of them.
Those are like
any sort of like alders. Oxbow. You'll see these growths, and they're rubbed like crazy.
Tag alders for sure.
But I'm like, where do I hang it in that? Like, what am I doing? You know? So I would like some guidance, so I don't.
I can give you partial guidance.
I don't want to waste. I will go through the thought process on my. So plans are, Matt, to answer your question. I don't even know that the area that I'm looking to hang these cams, based on the area that I'm hunting, is going to get any deer at all until rut time, anyways. So I'm like, now I'm begging the question: is it even worth going out there now to hang these things, or should I be waiting regardless? Or should I go hang on the hardwoods?
It's worth it because you'll gain information on whether it's a good early season spot, October spot, or November spot.
I already know it's a good November spot because I've seen it.
So then 2/3 of the information you can gain are still waiting.
Okay.
Get out there, son of a bitch.
That's true. Look, man, I don't have any sympathy for the bugs. I live in swampy North Carolina, and they are horrendous.
Dude, but God, you know what? I've never felt angrier other than being overtired, getting a tattoo, or getting bit by mosquitoes.
Go midday.
Those are my three bugaboos.
We got to go midday.
All right. Well, whatever. We'll figure it out. Anyway.
Sorry. That took a tangent. Sorry,
but I got to take a canoe. I got to put it in my car. It's like this whole like fucking process. And I'm like, oh, cool. My wife's in her master's degree program right now. I'm going to like, hey, honey, I already fuck you over like 1 or 2 nights a week. Here's another day. So I got to just play my cards appropriately.
True.
But
if I never knew you were going to whine this much, I wouldn't have asked.
I know, dude.
You opened a whole can of worms, man.
This is a therapy session.
I was just like Oregon, Illinois.
I just didn't want to hear all that.
I'm really excited for the trips because one's a wedding and it's a happy, monumentous moment, and the other is like a kid thing, and I love my children. But like the sacrifices are real. Okay, because
you're a good dad. Okay, you're a good dad.
I read this big thing about Eminem being a great dad. He fucking sacrificed going on like national tours. And he could have been at like Taylor Swift level bullshit right now if he would have just done those tours, but he didn't because he wanted to be with his daughter Haley, and now she turned out great. I want to be that dad.
And he already had a fuck ton of money.
And he already had Here's the thing: I have no fuck tons of money, but I want dadding is more important to me.
True.
So my plan is to be a damn good dad, husband, family member. That is first, then hunting is second, and it's just. You know, I get a little bit of FOMO. Come on, like I'm gonna fucking be freaking out.
Man. Like being a husband and dad is my favorite thing in the whole planet. And I'm glad that my kids are getting a smidge older to where they can join me in the woods, and we can have a little bit of the best of both worlds. And then I get to use my kids as ammunition when the wife is like, "No, I need you to stay home." I'm like, "But the boys really want to go hunting tomorrow."
Yeah, there you see that. I'm getting to that point. I'm getting to the point where, like, at some point, the pendulum will swing, and my wife will have a widow's weekend. And I'll have all the kids with me. It'll be great.
Yeah.
That ain't the case now. That being said, too, I love to take my daughter, who's going to be 7. Dude, she gets one mosquito bite. It turns into like a psychotic fucking problem. Like we're talking, it turns into like a 10-inch radius on her arm. And I'm like worried about her.
Start treating all of her clothes in permethrin.
Man, my youngest was like that. He's 8. He was like that for years. Now it's not so bad. But we started doing this thing where we wipe them down in
permethrin.
No. Also does work, but it's a mixture of coconut oil and like 10 drops. Basically, get a couple of tablespoons of coconut oil with about 10 drops of lavender essential oil.
Yeah.
And rub it all in, and then coat all their skin, their hair, around their ears with it. And so it's more natural. But it does work pretty good for mosquitoes and kind of like chiggers. I have not found it to work for like.
Carolina. That's crazy. Where'd you go to boot camp, by the way? Was it North Carolina?
No, California.
Yeah, you didn't have the chiggers. You had the hills. How was the Reaper for you?
The Crucible.
That's what I meant. Well, the hill was called the Reaper, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, man. It was like a million years ago. A lot more things after that were more harder.
Good to know.
Like math for Marines.
I had to take some like math program in college. They called it Alex, and it stood for something I forget. But it was like, if you get the problems right, you can get it done in like 2 months or whatever. Like, 2 weeks or some bullshit. But if you get them wrong, you're gonna be fucking around with it for a long time. I kept getting it wrong, and Alex just kept feeding me more problems. I'm like, fuck you, Alex. Like pouring bourbon. Like, eventually I got through it and it was fine. But yeah, I learned the hard way, literally. I think I even did calculus somewhere in there, and I blacked out, like either from drinking or from like mental fatigue. I don't know.
Well, can I just get to the point? I didn't really care about your guys' hunting plans. I just want to share my own, but I wanted to let you go first.
Yeah.
It's been like 30 minutes since I've asked, and not once.
Great question. Why do you ask?
Gosh, it's painful. Man, I'm going to Manitoba next month to go hunt bears with my cell phone.
Okay.
Woo! Over bait?
Thank you, man. Eric,
what's the poundage on that bow to kill a bear?
This one is 47, a whopping 47 pounds.
Really? Wow.
Long. My self bow. I've got one that's 47. I've got one that's 44, 53, and 60 right now hanging on my wall. But the one that I really like is made of a really crooked, snaky Osage pulling at 47.
When you say snaky, what do you mean? It's like it's greasy or what? What do you mean?
And it's I guess I guess some people can see this. Like the limbs, instead of going like straight, they're like this.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture on the old
like serpentine.
WhatsApps.
Like
yeah.
Serpentine limbs. Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm going to Kodiak to hunt Sitka blacktail in October.
Jeez.
No shit.
With the Comptons, some of the Comptons traditional bow hunter guys. Yeah.
I hope you kill the fuck out of some stuff, man.
Because you can shoot a lot of them if you get close enough, right?
And so they changed it a few years ago. You can only get one tag now in Kodiak.
Oh no, because you used to be able to get
for non-residents. What's that?
Because you used to be able to get like.
I think there were years you could get 3, and then it went to 2, and I think for the last 3 years it's been 1.
Probably.
Now residents can get more than 1, but non-residents can only get 1. But man, I'm really excited about going to Manitoba next month. It is over bait, but I was talking to a guy. It's with Stick Flingers Manitoba Hunt, so they cater to traditional archers and stuff. But I was talking to a guy that went out there hunting with them in the spring, and he's like, "Man, in 5 days I saw 64 bears."
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah, and he came home with a 6.5-foot black bear. So I mean, that's like, huge. Yeah, fantastic.
Make sure you're the predator, not the prey, when you're out there.
I'll try. I mean, I figure instead of the coconut oil and lavender, it'll be like bacon grease or something like that. But it's good for the skin.
I mean, that's one choice.
Don't go to any bars. You might pick up a few men.
As long as they buy me drinks.
If you put out, they will.
I don't know. That wasn't part of the bargain.
Can I push your stool in or what?
It was just to show up and smell like bacon.
Oh man, good stuff. Go check out the Bowyer Podcast, hosted by our guest Matt Morris. Good dude. This is a great time. Thank you, Matt, so much. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify. You can go to okshunter.com, check out the podcast network tab, find it there. Artwork is coming. Our graphic designer that we've used for these cover arts is Mason Primo out of New York. He's a really good dude. He's just a true artist, and things take time. So I am patient and eagerly awaiting to see the debut of what that's going to look like. I was hoping we would have it in time for this episode, but like I need to continue to be a patient human being.
If he doesn't hurt, if Senor Primo doesn't hurry up, I'm gonna have one of my kids draw on construction paper and put it up.
I think you do that no matter what.
I'm
Let's just see it.
I'm certain that what ends up happening every single time out of 10 shows or whatever, he delivers, and it's always worth the wait. So I have to continue to tell myself that as an impatient asshole. I'm gonna put us on mute, let the music pick up and fade out. Matt, hang by for a minute for a debrief, but this is what we're going to end the show with today.
All right. I'm glad you guys got to see me.